Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajakacharya Astotar Tati Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajakacharya Astotar Tati Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 7th day of December 2020 in SanDiego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 4 entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text 14 at the bottom of page 201. Namam karmani limpanti Name karma pales biha Iti mang yo bijanati Karma bir nasabadyate Namam karmani limpanti Name karma pales biha Iti mang yo bijanati Karma bhir nasabadyate Namang karmani limpanti Name karma pales biha Iti mang yo bijanati Karma bhir nasabadyate. Page 201. Namang karmani limpanti Name karma pales biha Itimang yo bijanati Karma bir nasabadyate. Go ahead. 14. Go ahead, Glenn. Namang karmani limpanti. Name karma palesbiha. Iti mam yo bijanati. Karma bi nasabhadyate. Namam karmani limpanti. Name karma palesbiha. Iti mam yo bijanati. Karma bir nasabhadyate. No, never mam, me. Karmani, all kinds of work. Limpanti, do affect. Na, nor, me, may, my. Karma pale, in fruit of action. Spriha, aspiration. Iti, thus, mam, me. Yaha, one who, abhijanati, does know. Karma bihi, by the reaction of such work. Na, never, saha, he, bhadyate, becomes entangled. Translation. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruit of reactions of work. Purport. As there are constitutional laws in the material world stating that the king can do no wrong, or that the king is not subject to the state laws, similarly the Lord, although he is the creator of this material world, is not affected by the activities of the material world. He creates and remains aloof from the creation, whereas the living entities are entangled in the fruit of results of material activities because of their propensity for lording it over material resources. The proprietor of an establishment is not responsible for the right and wrong activities of the workers, but the workers are themselves responsible. The living entities are engaged in their respective activities of sense gratification, and these activities are not ordained by the Lord. For advancement of sense gratification, the living entities are engaged in the work of this world, and they aspire to heavenly happiness after death. The Lord, being full in himself, has no attraction for so-called heavenly happiness. The heavenly demigods are only his engaged servants. The proprietor never desires the low-grade happiness such as the workers may desire. He is aloof from the material actions and reactions. For example, the rains are not responsible for different types of vegetation that appear on the earth. Although without such rains, there is no possibility of vegetative growth. Vedic Smriti confirms this fact as follows. Nimitta matram evaso srijyanam sargakarmani pradhana karani bhuta yato vai srijya shaktayaha. In the material creation, the Lord is only the supreme cause. The immediate cause is material nature, by which the cosmic manifestation is made visible. The created beings are of many varieties, such as the demigods, human beings, and lower animals, and all of them are subject to the reactions of their past good or bad activities. The Lord only gives them the proper facilities for such activities and the regulations of the modes of nature, but he is never responsible for their past and present activities. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.134 it is confirmed, Vaishamya nirgrinye na sape shatvat. The Lord is never partial to any living entity. The living entity is responsible for his own acts. The Lord only gives him facilities through the agency of material nature, the external energy. Anyone who is fully conversant with all the intricacies of this law of karma, or fruit of activities, does not become affected by the results of his activities. In other words, the person who understands this transcendental nature of the Lord is an experienced man in Krishna consciousness, and thus he is never subjected to the laws of karma. One who does not know the transcendental nature of the Lord, and who thinks that the activities of the Lord are aimed at fruit of results, as are the activities of the ordinary living entities, certainly becomes entangled himself in fruit of reactions. But one who knows the supreme truth is a liberated soul fixed in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, where are we? Krishna has been first of all describing his speaking of this Bhagavad Gita many millions of years ago to the sun god. Then he explained why he's comes again and comes periodically, because by the force of time, the science as it is becomes lost. It's just the way things work in the material world. The flow of the different yugas, gradually there's more modes of passion and ignorance, and pure devotional service becomes distorted. And eventually, Krishna sees the need for his personal advent. He rarely comes as himself, but he comes every yuga in some avatar or other. Although it is said in Kali Yuga he doesn't appear, but he appears in a covered incarnation. So there's this constant need, just like it's you're driving a car, there's always little adjustments you have to keep making, otherwise you go off the road. So the same thing happens with the science of bhakti, because in the material world there's a tendency for degradation. So he comes to reestablish Dharma, to annihilate the demons and protect the devotees. And then he talks about how simply knowing the nature of my birth and activities, in truth, one will not take birth again. Right? Now, this is similar to the verse we read today. Just knowing about Krishna, that Krishna is not entangled by his activities, right? That he doesn't suffer any good or bad results. He doesn't have he's not motivated to work in this world fruitively. If you just know that, you will not be bound by your karma. Now you may say, well, all right, I accept that. Now I can do anything I want. But it doesn't work that way, because remember this principle that what does it mean to really know something? Now, to know something means that you accept it as true, and that it affects your values and your activities, your actions. Now, if your actions continue to be guided or infected with the lower modes of nature, that's going to cover your knowledge. It's not that your knowledge can be separate from your activities in this world and your motivations. You see what I'm saying? And so really knowing Krishna in truth, and always that tattvata has to be added in all of these verses. It's there in the Janma Karma Chame Divam Evam Yo Vedi, tattvataha. It can't just be that I know of Krishna's birth, I know how he grew up in Vrindavan, and I definitely know about his, cavorting with the gopis, so I know Krishna. Now let me do whatever I want, But that's not actually knowing in truth. One has to understand the reality of, why Krishna takes birth, how he takes birth, his radical difference from our taking birth. And in other words, that knowledge is given to you. It's given to you. It's not just book knowledge. It's coming from within Krishna in the heart. And if you don't act according to that knowledge, if it's not really if it's not a part of your foundational knowledge of bhakti, if it's just some book knowledge, you're taking a course in Indian religions in college or something, then that doesn't mean then you're not going to be blessed with the freedom from reactions. So that's what's happening here. If one truly understands this about Krishna, then he must be a devotee. That's the idea. And if you're a devotee, your activities are motivated by your desire to please Krishna, to serve the devotees, to give Krishna, then you're definitely not going to be bound. There's no binding from that action. It's all freeing. It's all liberating you from action. Now this will become clear as we go on in the chapter. Krishna talks about the need to understand karma, akarma, and vikarma. You remember that? So that's going to become clearer as we go on. Kim karma kamakarte karma is coming up in a couple of verses. And karma being, in this context, activity that comports with the Vedic knowledge. Akarma being activity, like we do, that doesn't have any good or bad reaction. And vikarma is vicious activity, or against the rules and regulations, which produces suffering and bondage and even loss of the human life. So, and it's all based on, as all our activities are, your understanding of who you are, of what the goal of life is, of what's good and what's bad, not just in terms of your senses or immediate gratification, but in your ultimate good. This is what real knowledge means. So this knowledge is very important. It's not a knowledge of facts or information. It's knowledge that you have imbibed, that is guiding your activities and guiding your understanding of your place in this world and your what you should strive for. So that's an important. And otherwise, one could be confused here. If you just take this verse alone, if you just know that Krishna is not affected by his activities, freedom from karma. Hey, I read the Bhagavad Gita. I know it. Now I can do anything I want. It doesn't work that way. So that's an important aspect here. So Prabhupada, in his purport here, he gets the analogy, as he often does, as the Shastra does, a king, someone who, or even the president, we find, he's not subject to the same laws that ordinary people are, although in America it's supposed to be. It's not like that. But when there's an actual monarch, he has certain privileges. He's meant to be, in the Sanskrit, you'll find in the first canto, this term is used, the word Naradeva. Nara means human being, and Deva here means God. So, God's representative on earth as a human being. That the king is supposed to be like that. That's the source of this divine right of kings. Did you ever study European history? It became so corrupted. You can imagine someone with that kind of honor and power, and it becomes completely corrupt, which we had, they're just exploiting his position and lording it over. In other words, demonic. It's a dangerous philosophy to have, and that's why it was eventually, changed. There's no kings, or they're just figureheads, and even the leaders are also supposedly under the law. That's the way that was the revolution. But it's still imperfect. You still find tyrants coming to power. They don't claim to be a divine right, but they just, lord it over. So, but a real government, a godly kingdom, as led, we read about in the Bhagavatam, that word Naradeva really means something. It means that the king is the Lord's representative, and that's why Krishna is so anxious that the Rajas become rishis and they become rajarshis. This was the whole point of the Mahabharata war, to reinstitute Dharma in the person of Yudhishthira, who would, by his influence, he would propagate Krishna consciousness, and things would be right. He would live a godly life. He would, and it would be benefit for everybody. And that's why Krishna says, "Yada yada hi dharma saglana bhavati bharata." When there's an upsurge of irreligion in the world, and all of these anomalies are taking place, I come to rectify things, because there has to be a force greater than the demons that sometimes become very powerful, as we read in the Bhagavatam. So it happens periodically. And, the whole movement, Krishna consciousness movement, started by Lord Chaitanya, is ultimately the same idea, is that Krishna consciousness will become ascendant in the world. Not for the rest of Kali Yuga, but there'll be a 10,000-year reign, of which we're at the beginning. 500 years is a very small portion of that. Which will help everyone. People there'll be a revolution in the world, just like it says in the Bhagavatam. We may not be able to see it from our perspective coming, but what's happened so far is miraculous. In a mere 50, a little bit more than 50 years, Krishna consciousness is spread all over the world. There's books in every language. There's temples and centers everywhere, and so it's spreading. Of course, the demons are also doing their thing, so it's a battle. But Krishna always wins in the end. So. Okay, any questions on this verse or purport? Okay, so Krishna's one point here brings up, and it comes up again. Krishna's not responsible for what we do with the facility that's given us. In other words, it's our choice to be virtuous or sinful, and we get our just desserts. And in that regard, Krishna remains aloof, and there's a whole mechanism, the material energy and the demigods and everything that are seeing that we get just we get. And eventually, when we turn to Him, when we accept the guidance from the great souls who are always present on the earth and the Shastra, then Krishna takes a more direct hand in guiding us and giving us a push this way, that way, to bring us into the fold, and so that our life actually becomes auspicious. But never is he even though he's set it up and he's overseeing everything, he's not responsible for our reactions. We're bringing it all on ourselves. Taking that responsibility itself is a big step forward. To not blaming others, certainly not blaming God, and realizing this, whatever is occurring, is due to something in the past. And if you're a devotee, that very important verse, Tattenu Kampam Susamikshimano, one of Brahma's prayers, that the real devotee, he's always really seeing everything as Krishna's mercy, even the so-called bad things that happen to him, and how it could have been so much worse. Krishna's minimizing it, so that's still a positive feeling toward Krishna. What to speak of the good things that happen? Oh, Krishna's so kind, he's given me more facility for his service. You see? So anything that happens, you still maintain that positive outlook toward Krishna. Whereas when the philosophy isn't understood and it's kind of a dharma, then anything bad that happens, you rail against God, or even the concept of God. Sometimes, how could there be a God? I don't know if I ever told you about my brother, where I tried to preach to him, but we came from a Jewish background, and he said absolutely not. There cannot be a God because the Holocaust happened, and a lot of people lost their faith during World War II. That came out of it. That's why Europe is so much further along in the closing of churches than America is. America's getting there now. So that means a lack of understanding. That's all brought about by human activity. It's a result. Even these, from a philosophical point of view, it's not like we're excusing the Holocaust or anything. It was a horrible thing that happened. But that classic question of the problem of evil in philosophy. Why do bad things happen to good people? And our answer is, basically, there's no good people. If you're in this material world, you've turned away from God. And even though the child, is injured or even killed or whatever happens, which happened plenty in the Holocaust, innocent persons, you understand the philosophy, and they're not innocent. Everyone is a very ancient soul, beyond the realms of time. Where we just happen to be living in this particular body, and so each of us is getting our just desserts. This can be a very disturbing philosophy. I don't know if you heard, this happened some years ago. It was some big coach of what we call soccer, they call football in Europe. And he was one of the leading coaches of the commercial teams in England, in the UK. And somehow for other, I don't know why, he made a statement how even like people who are disabled or in wheelchairs, this is karma. It's not that they're innocent. There's something back there. Oh my God, that because of great fury, he lost his job and everything. Because it's just too much for people to try to fathom. That the problem of evil is not a problem when you understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. When you understand the law that we lived before. Even the Christians think that we're eternal, starting from now, but we came into existence when we're born and we got one shot, right? Isn't that the You accept Jesus now or you go to eternal damnation. So the whole thing is based on fear and trembling, God, okay. That's not bhakti. All right, any questions? We'll go on to 15. Evam gyatva kritam karma purvai api mumukshubhihi kudu karmaiva tasmatvam purvai purvatadam kritam. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. So this is the point. They acted with the understanding. If you act differently, you lose the understanding. The knowledge is covered or distorted. Purport. There are two classes of men. Some of them are full of polluted material things within their hearts, and some of them are materially free. Krishna consciousness is equally beneficial for both of these persons. Those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for a gradual cleansing process, following the regulative principles of devotional service. Those who are already cleansed of the impurities may continue to act in the same Krishna consciousness, so that others may follow their exemplary activities and therefore be benefited. Foolish persons or neophytes in Krishna consciousness often want to retire from activities without having knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Arjuna's desire to retire from activities on the battlefield was not approved by the Lord. One need only know how to act. To retire from the activities of Krishna consciousness and to sit aloof, making a show of Krishna consciousness, is less important than actually engaging in the field of activities for the sake of Krishna. Arjuna is here advised to act in Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of the Lord's previous disciples, such as the sun god Vibhisvan, as mentioned herein before. The Supreme Lord knows all his past activities, as well as those of persons who acted in Krishna consciousness in the past. Therefore, he recommends the acts of the sun god, who learned this art from the Lord some millions of years before. All such students of Lord Krishna are mentioned here as past liberated persons engaged in the discharge of duties allotted by Krishna. So this idea of, because after all, this is the Krishna consciousness movement. So the same question may arise that Arjuna poses at the beginning of the 3rd chapter and again at the 5th chapter. Well, if it's a question of consciousness and it's all intelligence, then what do you want me to fight this war for? Let me just meditate or, read a book. But no, the idea is that the knowledge, again, is confirmed and deepened when you act according to the principles. Because we always have to remember that this knowledge is being awarded to us by Krishna from within the heart. And just as he gives the knowledge, he can also cover the knowledge. What does it say? Sarvasya charvati sanavisto mata smriti jnanam apohanam. So he gives the remembrance, he gives the knowledge, but he also gives the forgetfulness. And that forgetfulness is most apparent when we leave the spiritual world. Right? Here we are fully God conscious, but we don't want to be, because that's crimping our desire to enjoy separately. So there's no way you can enjoy God's property while always thinking of God. It belongs to God, it belongs to God. No one wants to feel that. He wants to feel it's my property. And therefore I have a right to enjoy it. But that's ignorance. So the real knowledge has to be covered so you can fall into illusion. It's all under Krishna's energy of Mahamaya. So here he's saying that again they understood this evam gyatva, this principle of mine, that I'm not entangled. And they acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. They acted in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. You should accept, because Arjuna wanted to satisfy his senses by not fighting, right? That was Krishna put him into that illusion. That I can't even imagine living. I mean, what's most startling about it is where he says, I cannot even imagine living without the sons of Dhritarashtra, who tried several times to kill him and his brothers, and who had insisted on this war, trying to usurp the throne. And yet Arjuna is so open-hearted and soft-hearted because there's a family relationship, a distant, cousin-brother thing. They're part of the same dynasty, the Kurus. He couldn't imagine killing them, What to speak of Bhishma and Drona like that. So that sentiment was material. Even though it showed that he was a kind-hearted Vaishnava, in this context, because Krishna had arranged for the battle specifically to annihilate the demonic forces, personified by Duryodhana, etc., and to reestablish Dharma. So therefore, it was the wrong sentiment. Even though it showed his kind-heartedness, it was in the context. It was not the right thing to do. So this. Activity on the basis of the knowledge has to be there. And that's where he said, therefore you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. And sometimes doing your duty is a painful thing. There's austerity involved. And Arjuna has to, he has to put aside his family feelings and all these things, and it's an either or. Did you ever study philosophy? The Kierkegaard? Didn't he have that thing? He had a whole book titled Either Or. He was like a strict Christian, and he was, either you're going to, surrender to Jesus, or you're going to surrender to Mammon, whatever. So it comes down to that oftentimes. I mean, when we talk about, how did we come here? We turned our back on Krishna. It's 180 degrees. In other words, we wanted to forget so that we could try to exploit and enjoy. So now we're given the choice to turn back after all these years and all these births and all these attempts to enjoy separately. Now, in the human form of life, take advantage of the chance we have and really come back to the side of light. That wonderful verse of how did fear come about? Because that's the nature of material energy. As soon as you're detached from Krishna, of course you can't ultimately be detached from Krishna, but you can forget and live in that illusion. And that illusion includes fearfulness. Mayam vidyabanaveshatak syad ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmriti. Very important line. So fear arises when you become absorbed in Krishna's material energy, the external, called vidya, the duality. Abhinaveshatak, that means the mind is absorbed. And what brings that absorption about? Second line, ishadapetasya, turning away from the Isha, from the Lord, from Krishna. And viparya, becoming reversed in your, instead of being the servant, you try to become the master. Instead of Krishna being the enjoyer, you'll become the enjoyer. So it's viparya, everything's upside down. And asmriti, you forget. You're covered, asmriti. So that's the material energy, and it becomes fearful. Because suddenly you're just thrown, you don't feel that connection to Krishna. That protection, which is what the surrendered souls always feel. As in Vrindavan, it shows so many, this fire comes up, the rains come down from Indra, and so many dangers, and they just call out to Krishna, and you feel safe. So what's the solution? It's all given in this one verse. Tanmaya, it's all due to Maya, Maya's energy. Tanmayato Buddha abhajetam. One has to be intelligent, and abhajetam, turn back toward Krishna and worship that very same Lord that you turned away from. How? Bhakti aikayesham, with one point of pure unalloyed devotion. Bhakti aikayesham. Guru devatatma. And also regarding one's preceptor, the bona fide spiritual master, as the Guru Devata Atma, as divine and one's very self. So that's the very nice analysis. Prabhupada would often quote that verse. So this is all part of it. Krishna's saying, here's how one can come back to that understanding, and the proof that you understand this is that you should do your duty. So Arjuna is still being convinced here. And the next verse is the one that sets up the subsequent verses about the difference between karma, akarma, and vikarma. Kim karma karmeti kavayopyatra mohita tatte karma pavakshyami yagyatva mokshase ashubhat. So actually it's this verse and the next verse that introduces it. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Purport. Action in Krishna consciousness has to be executed in accord with the examples of previous bona fide devotees. This is recommended in the 15th verse, which we just read. Purvataram, the previous devotees and sages. That's recommended in previous 15th. Why such action should not be independent will be explained in the text to follow. To act in Krishna consciousness, one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in a line of disciplic succession, as explained in the beginning of this chapter. The system of Krishna consciousness was first narrated to the sun god. The sun god explained it to his son Manu, Vaivasvata Manu. Manu explained it to his son Ikshvaku, and the system is current on this earth from that very remote time. Therefore, one has to follow in the footsteps of previous authorities in the line of disciplic succession.
Otherwise, even the most intelligent men will be bewildered regarding the standard action of Krishna consciousness. For this reason, the Lord decided to instruct Arjuna in Krishna consciousness directly. Because of the direct instruction of the Lord to Arjuna, anyone who follows in the footsteps of Arjuna is certainly not bewildered. It is said that one cannot ascertain the ways of religion simply by imperfect experimental knowledge. Actually, the principles of religion can only be laid down by the Lord himself. Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam, Bhagavatam 6.3.19. This is Yamaraj, I think, speaking to his dutas. One can manufacture a religious principle. No one can manufacture a religious principle by imperfect speculation. One must follow the footsteps of great authorities like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Manu, the Kumaras, Kapila, Prahlad, Bhishma, Shukadev Goswami, Yamaraj, Janaka, and Bali Maharaj. Does anyone recognize that list? The 12 Mahajans. By mental speculation, one cannot ascertain what is religion or self-realization. Therefore, out of causeless mercy to his devotees, the Lord explains directly to Arjuna what action is and what inaction is. Only action performed in Krishna consciousness can deliver a person from the entanglement of material existence. Now, interestingly enough, when as we read the subsequent verses, it will be clear that action in Krishna consciousness is actually a karma, which sounds like no action, right? Karma, akarma. But the idea is, karma in this context is defined as action according to the Vedas, but which is fruitive. So that doesn't get you closer to Krishna. It may keep you in the human form of life, you go to heaven and so forth, but you don't make any progress, as Krishna explains in the 9th chapter. Akarma is activity in Krishna consciousness that doesn't have any result, good or bad, in terms of karmic reactions. It puts you in a state of naishkarmya, where you're acting, but you're not acting but not acting, in one sense, because there's no reaction. And vikarma is action that's fruitive and is against the Vedas, and so it's very dangerous because you're liable to lose your human form of life. So that'll become clear in subsequent verses. All right, so this verse naturally leads to this next verse. Karmano yapi bodhavyam bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. Purport. If one is serious about liberation from material bondage, one has to understand the distinctions between action, inaction, and unauthorized actions. One has to apply oneself to such an analysis of action, reaction, and perverted actions because it is a very difficult subject matter. To understand Krishna consciousness and action according to its modes, one has to learn one's relationship with the Supreme. That is, one who has learned perfectly knows that every living entity is an eternal servant of the Lord, and that consequently one has to act in Krishna consciousness. The entire Bhagavad Gita is directed toward this conclusion. Any other conclusions against this consciousness and its attendant actions are vikarmas, or prohibited actions. To understand all this, one has to associate with authorities in Krishna consciousness and learn the secret from them. This is as good as learning from the Lord directly. Otherwise, even the most intelligent persons will be bewildered. And the next verse is one of those puzzling verses, the translation, where you really need the purport. You always need the purport, but it's Karmanya karma yak pashed akarmani cha karma yaha sabbuddhiman manusheshu sayukta krishna karma krit. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. Purport. A person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society, even though he is engaged in all sorts of activities for Krishna. Akarma means without reaction to work. The impersonalist ceases fruitive activities out of fear, so that the resultant action may not be a stumbling block on the path of self-realization. But the personalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Because everything is done for Krishna, he enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of his service. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sorts of reactionary elements of work. So let's see. Inaction, in action. So that's Krishna consciousness, right? You're doing all kinds of things, but you're not acting in the sense of doing something that's going to produce a reaction. What you're doing is actually eliminating latent reactions that you have, right? And not incurring any new ones. So this is the definition of being on the path to liberation. And in fact, if you're absorbed in that kind of work all the time, you're already liberated. Probably would love to quote this verse. Iha actually in this verse, long I, long A, means the activities. Yasya Hare Dasa are all in the realm of servants of Hari, serving Hari. With what? Karmana Manasagara, with your active senses, with your mind, with your words, and everything else you have. Nikala, all of them. Nikala Jivan Mukta. So this term Jivan Mukta means you're liberated even while in this material world, and then you're on your way back to Godhead. So that's being described here. Karma nikarma. So now, what is it to be active even though inactive? So that's the meditating yogi, or say in the yogi class, and you're sitting there for 20 minutes meditating. I tried it, That mind is going all over the place. So you're acting in mind, but to external vision, you're not doing anything. You're definitely doing stuff. The mind is active, and that and so that's inaction. I'm sorry, action in inaction. It looks like inaction, but you're still active, and so that's not what we're looking for. That's artificial. All these senses, and the active senses and the knowledge acquiring senses, they all have to be engaged in Krishna, because they all belong to Krishna. That's the meaning of the word Rishikesh. He's the master of the senses, of our senses. So when we're determined to act that way, that's that's the stage of liberation. Now that's not the final goal of a bhakta. We're after, in that liberated state to experience Krishna directly and understand our rasa, and love is the final goal. But the means to that goal involves understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it, and acting in that understanding, and not doing so many things that are against that understanding, and ultimately will bring the curtain of illusion down on our heads again. Because just as the curtain is being lifted because of your acting properly, you're chanting, you're directing your attention, that curtain can come down again. We see it. We've seen it. That's how we got here in the first place, right? The curtain of illusion came down because we wanted to try to enjoy. So if even in this state of half Krishna consciousness we want to enjoy again, the curtain can come down again. So this is very sobering. So the idea is that to be introspective and to be observant as we do things, really, is this in the realm of Krishna consciousness? Am I doing my duty? This is what's so great about having all these duties to do, because I think I can do that. They're asking me to sweep at 9:30 every morning. I think I can do that. And as soon as you do that, you're in the realm of getting rid of your karma. You feel liberated. Chant Hare Krishna while you do it. And when all of your activities are in that realm, yes, of doing your duty, because in the first stage, sadhana bhakti, vaidhi bhakti, means according to rules and regulations of the shastra and given by authorities, by the preceptor, like that. So you're in tune. You're doing your duties. So that's a secure place to be. And the more we act like that, because that's exactly what Krishna is telling Arjuna to do, in that consciousness, you should also perform your duty in Krishna consciousness, right? It's funny because, I'm working my service, is sometimes not understood. What I'm doing. There's a project underway now in 2022, which will be the 50th anniversary of the publication of the Macmillan Gita, to come up with a final Gita. We made various little tweaks, and we're still doing. We want to complete that so that there's nothing significant to be done. We may find a comma out of place or something. So one of the things that we're looking at is Prabhupada's original transcript. Right, the original, what we have of the original. It's in different states. We have the typed out version for the first 4 or 5 chapters, which includes the chapter we're on now. And then we have some dictation chapters. And some we don't have the original. We have retyped, edited manuscripts, of latter chapters. But this chapter we have Prabhupada's original transcript. And one of the things in the verse we just read, in 15, right, we just read 15, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. What Prabhupada said there, actually, was, with this understanding of my transcendental nature, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted in Krishna consciousness. Right in the translation. That was taken out, not by the first editor, by the first editor in 68, Ray Rama. So the question is, should we put it back in there? In other words, this is true of a lot of the translations. We probably would put the words Krishna consciousness in there, and it comes out often as devotional service, which I think we're probably going to leave. But sometimes it's just not there. So here in this particular verse we just read, Prabhupada said, or this is the edited version, I forgot exactly what he said, but he put Krishna consciousness here. They acted in Krishna consciousness. So, with this understanding of my transcendental nature that he described in text 14, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. Perform your duty in Krishna consciousness following the footsteps. He didn't say that, but that's the implication. So it's interesting that just one of the ones that I'm thinking of restoring is here, but there's a whole bunch of them, and sometimes they come out as devotional service, sometimes it's not in there at all. So we're going through that now. But that's actually the point, is that this is all possible when you're actually in Krishna consciousness, when you're getting this spiritual strength by Krishna. By directing your attention to him, by chanting your rounds, by doing the morning program, where you can curb the desire for sense gratification, which may come just in the form of sleep. That's a big thing. Whatever, and to actually perform your duties while trying to remember Krishna. That I'm doing this for Krishna, connecting. There's no spontaneous love happening at that point. But there's a strong determination. This is my duty. It's been given by the preceptor. It's authorized, and I'm going to do it. And when you get into that mode of determination to do your duty, your life becomes lighter. Because I definitely felt this when I joined the temple and started to just take part in the whole. Lighter means that the whole burden of your previous karma is being wiped away. This is all happening on the subtle platform, but the effect is that you feel freer and you feel encouraged, and all kinds of positive things happen. But there's a necessity of determination and will to perform your duty. I know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to try to do it in Krishna consciousness. So that's exactly what Krishna is describing here. Arjuna is hesitating. No, you should do your duty because which is to fight in this battle, and it's what I want. And that ultimately Arjuna will say. Karishe Vachanantava. I will do as you say. So it's a whole conversion experience that he's undergoing here. Of course, he's a very intimate devotee, but he's taken that role. And this is so important, understanding the intricacies of activity and what's auspicious activity. Okay, so how far did we get? Did we do 17? I think we did 17 too. No, we did 18 too. All right, so we'll pick up on 19 tomorrow. But I've left a few minutes here for a couple of nectar shlokas. I should always end with something sweet. So here's an interesting verse. There was a friend of mine in Columbus. He reminded me of this verse, which I taught him many years ago, and I'd forgotten it. There's a chapter in the 12th canto in which it's all about the different kinds of annihilations. The big one, the universal annihilation, the periodic annihilation of Brahma's day when he just takes rest, everything gets destroyed up to his planet, And the individual annihilations we go through when we die, it goes on and on. And at the end, there's this verse, because he's described, this ocean of destruction and suffering, really. So he says, Sangsara sindhamati dusta namuti tirshor nanyak plavo bhagavatak purushottamasya lilakatara sadishevana mantarena pungso bhaved vivada dukkada varditasya. So in this one verse, he refers to the ocean. There's a boat that carries across the ocean of suffering in the samsara. And he also compares it to a forest fire. Usually it's one or the other in the verse, but in this verse he has both. It's the forest fire and it's the ocean. So he says, Sangsara sindhum, the ocean of samsara, ati dustaram, very difficult to cross over ocean. Utti tirshor, but those who are eager to cross over it really want to get liberation. There's no other boat. Nanyak plavo bhagavatak purushottamasya lilakatara sadishevanam. But cultivating the taste for hearing and chanting the lila of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the boat. Lilakatara sadishevanam. Antarena, there is no other. For who? Pungso bhaved vivada dukkada varditasya, for those human beings who are suffering the very varied and numerous miseries in this fire of material life. So after this whole thing about, kind of a bleak chapter of different kind of annihilations, he gives us Lila Kata, the pastimes of Krishna. So here's a little verse about the pastimes of Krishna. You may have heard it before. Uradi kutamudari bhangam navadala datikidanora sadangam yuvati vadata tamanana tadangam pranamati yamana tatikatadangam. You can hear the poetry, Rupa Goswami. His flute emanates entrancing sounds for the cowherd girls whose love abounds, for the clever cloud-complexioned lord who's dancing upon the Kalindi shore. That's where we want to go. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.